Hey everyone, Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett. We've got some great guests with us today to talk about the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter and the Regional Animal Shelter Foundation. There's so many opportunities here in this community to donate, to give time, money, energy, whatever it may be, and I'm very thankful for the passionate people that help make the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter the great place that it is. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Mayor's Table. I'm Farmington Mayor Nate Duckett, and I have a great group of co-hosts with me today and guests. So I want to start and just jump right in and recognize everybody who's at the table today. We are here to talk about animals, and I think bringing in Stacy Voss, who's our director of the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter, it's perfect timing. Stacy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and then we have the chairperson of the Regional Animal Shelter Foundation. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Mrs. Karen Bayless, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a legend here in our midst.
Oh, gee.
Yes. Miss Betty Berry. Miss Betty Berry, thank you for being here.
And thank you. This is a great opportunity to be able to talk and have been called to do so.
Right. Well, it's a joy.
Yeah.
It's an honor for you to be here.
Right.
And when we talk about animal shelters here in this area, it's hard to talk about them without Betty Berry, who is such a proponent for the Regional Animal Shelter and the beautiful facility that we have built here in our city, which serves all of San Juan County and beyond, I'm sure, Stacy, and was desperately needed. So
Absolutely.
I'm just thankful that you get to be with us and we get to recognize
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, Stacy, I want to start with you first and kind of maybe the state of the shelter, so to speak, how things are going down there and things we should know.
Well, we've been through quite a few changes and upheavals over the last year, but despite all the tragedy, we've also had a lot of silver linings with the shelter. We were able to kind of control our intake a little bit and save more lives than we ever have before. So right now, we're just kind of trying to get staffed and get back to somewhat normal. Our intake is definitely increasing. We've had, we're officially in kitten season.
Okay.
That usually starts about May and lasts about through October, and we're right in the middle of it. So we have lots of kittens coming in, but they're also available for adoption. So
Sure.
we're just kind of hanging in there and doing our thing and kind of adjusting to the new normal.
Well, I'd say the challenges certainly faced in the past 18 months. Obviously, there was a time that the shelter was basically shut down to the public, correct?
We were never completely shut down to the public. We have always been somewhat open. We just tried to do everything by appointment just to kind of control our population, make sure we had enough staff available to take care of anybody that we needed to take care of. So, and just frankly, the demand wasn't there for a little while. I think people were home and for some reason they weren't needing to bring animals in, and we were getting strays back home immediately. So it was really nice. We had we actually took a deep breath and we were able to look at things a little bit differently and initiate some programs and just kind of, just like I said, save more lives. We were able to do a lot of medical cases that we hadn't been able to do before. We sent a ton out to foster, and so it was just, like I said, we had some silver linings the last 18 months, despite all the darkness.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the fostering program. I know that's something that's kind of near and dear to your heart and something that's growing. The need is growing. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about the fostering program and what it is, and if people are interested, how can they get involved?
So the fostering program is, we always have animals that come in that aren't ready for adoption quite yet. They're not old enough, they have medical issues, maybe even a couple of behavioral issues that they need to work through before we can place them up for adoption. So that's where the fosters come in and where our community comes in. So ideally, they're here at the shelter for a very short time, and then we're able to call our foster homes in, and they come pick them up, take them home, provide the TLC. You know, we obviously provide all the medical care, all the food, that type of thing. But the foster homes really provide the TLC, the socialization, the space in their home. You know, we have moms and babies constantly, and
Sure.
you know, a shelter is no place to raise a family, essentially. So if they can get into a foster home and be socialized with kids and other animals and just take it easy. And then those medical cases too, we're able to do a few, and we can do more with the more foster homes. So they can recover in a foster home, and it's so much less stressful, and they recover faster. And it's just an awesome way to involve the community in what we do in our life-saving efforts. So it's a big deal. Right now we have about 100 animals in foster, which is a lot. But we also have probably 30 or more that need to go into foster. It's just something we've struggled with the entire time I've been here, is not ever quite having enough foster homes available. So the more we have, the more animals we can save, and the more space there is in the shelter to take in more animals. So it's a very awesome program to get the community involved and help save lives.
So if somebody wanted to apply to be a foster parent, do they need to come down to the shelter, or can they apply online?
They can apply online. So it's all through the City of Farmington website.
Okay.
They can go in and put in a foster application. It's pretty simple. Just ask a few questions, and then we have a Facebook foster group specifically for our fosters, and a lot of times we'll post the new fosters in there that see if people are interested in fostering those and what we have available. And we do some foster orientations and some training. So it's just a way to, you're not alone. We're there
Sure.
to support you and help you and make sure that the animals turn out okay. So.
Well, there's always room for volunteers in many sectors of our city. And Karen, I know with the work that the foundation has done, your volunteer base, we need that, and we need it to grow. And the donors, of course, who are involved in the Regional Animal Shelter Foundation, they contribute a lot to the programs at the shelter as well as other things. Can you tell us a little bit, or Betty maybe can tell us a little bit of the history of how the foundation came about?
Well, why don't you do some of the history so people know where we came from?
Well, and it's quite a story. Hard to believe that it was initially a program started at 2008, if you can believe that and do your counting back. Mayor Stanley, and he apparently had been getting lots of feedback and comments about the shelter that was on Lake Street.
It was the Pound.
And,
The Pound,
well,
yeah.
I was going to let y'all. You could decide what you wanted to call it, but it needed something. So he called 5 of us together, started the pet project, the steering committee. And Phil Morin was one, Sylvia Little, Donna Ogilvy, Joyce, Donald, and myself. And we were to go out and visit with anybody we could find who would listen to the story and see what the feeling was about a shelter. So sure enough, it was very positive, the way in which the feedback that we got. So they had an architect come in, a premier architect, but he came in also with a $7 million price tag.
Sure.
So that seemed to be something we needed to talk about. So we changed administration, and Tommy Robertson was our mayor. And he said, we're not going for $7 million, but we might go for for something. And we did have another architect came in, and we presented drew up the present plans. So we were challenged at that time, the pet group, the steering committee, to go out and raise $500,000. Well, I've been raising money in this community for many years. This was the easiest job I ever had.
Wow.
It was peanuts. So we were able to raise that money, and what we were going to do is we were going to furnish the inside, the furniture, and lots of special things. The audio system, which didn't pan out too well, but many things like that. And the way we did that is we sold cages, we sold rooms, we sold anything we could sell.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is we had a command performance and said, we want all of the brass at the city to come out to visit with us. And we presented them with that $500,000.
Big deal.
But the amazing thing is that we raised $600,000. And the Farmington is something else again, the community is. I'll swear I think you could build a better mousetrap and we would further it.
Yeah.
We'd just really get in there. But one of the most fun things I think I had was going out and meeting the public. And our mayor had given us a virtual tour, so we had that. Phil and I would make up our itinerary ahead of time. One day, we made 2 calls and raised $45,000 in 2
Wow.
calls. Isn't that exciting?
That is exciting.
Great people. And I might add, they're still contributing.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that Farmington just absolutely gets behind. And Stacy and I went several years ago to visit several of the service clubs. And I always would tell the group as we started, we're not here saying that animals are more important than people. But what we are saying is how very special they are to people, animals. And that's what we found out. So it took us, we really started the campaign in 2011. We had some Ells and Tails was one. We had open house at the Peter Salzman's house. We had a number of things like that. And the city did something very nice. They permitted us to have a 3-year pay program. So people would say, I'll give $1,500 and take this room, and then we would give them for people who chose
Sure.
some time. And that was really, that was a good incentive. And it gave people the opportunity to go ahead and commit to 3 years rather than of course, the one. And that made a lot of difference.
Yeah.
So finally, 2013, we cut the ribbon.
Yeah.
So exciting. And as I said, Farmington is a place all of its own, and they came to the front, and many, many of them are still contributors. And that's thanks to the Stacy and the fact that it's just a nice installation.
It is a nice facility, Betty, and thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And thank you for that history. I love the fact that we have community members' names on the different rooms and on the
that in
cages, and
itself.
it just makes you feel like this is something that's ours. You know, there's ownership in there. It's not just a city facility. I feel that way about Ricketts, and be able to walk up and see all the companies and the individuals who've contributed to the renovations that have happened there. And I look for opportunities for other, big city programs where you're providing that type of public amenity where others can also contribute. But Karen, right now with the foundation, you're continuing to raise money and putting that towards many programs. Tell us about it.
We've been really fortunate. As Betty said, it's not just Farmington, it's our community, and we actually have donors from across the nation. And we're always amazed that a check comes in from New Jersey. And we're like, wow, they must have relatives in the area, but we can never discern that. So we're just very grateful.
Interesting.
And I just recently pulled together with our treasurer, Steve Ellis, and we have a great board of directors, by the way. And they're all animal lovers and just will do almost anything to further the comfort of the animals while they're being held at the shelter, and do the things that we can to make the medical side easier for them to get things done, to make life better for the pets, to make better life for the staff, to try to, get them freer to spend more time with animals and not on the chores that have to be done.
Right.
But the volunteer base at the shelter really picks up on that, and I see pictures posted all the time. They're down there doing laundry and folding huge stacks of blankets and everything. But our donors have been very generous over all of the years that I've been involved. Betty drugged me in a few years ago because I had drugged her into another organization. So payback time, and I'm really grateful she did. I have two cats, 6 years old, never been outside, that were shelter cats, and you go in and what are you going to do? But I think one of the things I wanted to bring up before we get into the donations, I think you should watch the people going in and go, oh, look, so-and-so gave this cage. I know them.
Yes.
And we also have a very lovely hand-carved donation box down there that's in the shape of a bone.
Yeah.
And so there's always money being jammed down in there because people come just maybe to look at a pet, or maybe they had to have an animal put down. And so they put very generous donations in there besides writing checks to the foundation itself. So thank you to all the people who have donated. But since 2015, when we went back, Steve Ellison is our treasurer. He and I went back through all of the checkbooks and said, well, let's just tally this up and divide it into some columns and see what we've done over the years. it ended up being almost $600,000 additional to the money that they put in for the furnishings.
Oh my goodness.
So that's
like
significant.
$1.2 million we're talking about between
That's right.
the initial and
All
just since
don-
2015.
All donations.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of some of the things that we do. I mean, obviously, one of the bigger things that's very visible is we purchased the transport van.
Yeah.
And had it wrapped. I think you all designed at the shelter, you designed the wrap, and we got that put on. And that has been a super bonus, because when we can't, Stacy can talk more to this, but do you want to talk about the transfers?
Sure. In this area, we still have an overpopulation problem, despite everything that, both the Aztec shelter and we've done in the programs and the progress we have made, we still just have an overabundance of animals. So both us and Aztec end up transferring animals out to other areas that don't have as many animals as we do, and actually the pets are in quite high demand.
Yes.
So we're able to transfer those out to other areas and other shelters and rescues that help us take care of them.
Well, I will say the number of individuals that I have known in the past who have volunteered to be transfer people. I mean, it's been great. They're willing to take their time and money and energy to transfer these animals to Colorado. And funny story, I was in Denver for the Outdoor Recreation Conference a few years ago and came across a booth with the individual who's working there. She said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Farmington." She goes, "Oh my gosh, my dog is from Farmington." I said, "Really?"
$100 for their dog.
Her
I
dog
love
was
it.
from Farmington. So it was great to see that program's working, and we're able to get pets where pets are wanted and into those bigger cities. So, yeah, it was interesting.
So to go along with the van, we also have purchased all of the transport crates. So that's a lot, but just you would have to go down some morning with Amber Francisco and see the whole organization. I mean, it takes almost 3 to 4 days to get everybody organized to go, because they have to be screened and make sure they're not ill and yada, yada, yada. And then that morning is just getting everybody into the crates and then packed. She's got it jigsaw puzzled in there. It's amazing how she can do it. And Dog is my co-pilot just took how many did they take this last weekend?
41. So we did our first flight. We haven't really done flights before. And Dog is my co-pilot. We got hooked up through another organization, and we were pretty desperate to get some animals out, and they did our first flight. So we actually had to load all the dogs up in the transfer van and cats at the shelter, drove up to the airport, and then load up their airplane.
Oh my
and
gosh.
they flew up to Fort Collins for us. So
Wow.
it was quite the undertaking. Volunteer response was amazing.
Yeah.
And then it was just happened at just the right time, because we were pretty full.
Yeah.
And so it was perfect.
So other things that we have been able to do for the shelter is we did a dog, and you tell me what TIP stands for. Dog TIP training for the staff and
It
volunteers.
was volunteer training.
Okay. So we paid to have people come in, professionals to come in, so that they can, use the clickers and different things to try
Right.
to calm the dogs down, get them trained so they're a little bit better behaved, because you walk past the dog side and everybody goes crazy because
Sure.
they're hopeful you're coming in. The cats, on the other hand, just kind of sneak back behind their litter boxes if they're shy and have to be socialized out of there. We just actually wrote checks yesterday for 2 new commercial dishwashers, one for the dog side, one for the cat side, because the ones that were there were on their last legs and probably not as high grade as should have been put in there in the first place. So we just wrote checks for that, and we just wrote a check for a new piece of equipment for the medical side called a plasma sterilizer, which is an autoclave, but the equipment that is used on the medical side has a lot of small rubber or silicon pieces that can't go through the high heat in a normal autoclave. So we initially were looking at a gas autoclave, but that was not going to be extremely functional because it would have required reventing and all this other stuff. So Dr. Rachel, our great vet down there, found this plasma sterilizer. So we have that. We have written the check for that yesterday too.
Wow.
So those types of things. We remodeled the entire laundry area. It was not designed.
You don't mind doing the towels and the dog beds in now.
Right.
Because it's pretty.
Well, not as much.
Yeah.
But the city, we partnered with the city on that, and they took out a half bath and just kind of reconfigured the entire thing, and we bought ultra great commercial grade washers and dryers. The laundry was just stacked up down the hallway because the dryers couldn't handle the load that the washers could put out, like most households. You know,
Yeah.
The dryer is always
If you got multiple kids, it's definitely that's the
it's
case.
the dryer,
It's the
right?
dryer.
Right. So we did that a couple of years ago. The interior courtyard where the dogs get to go out and socialize
Sure.
with potential adopters, and just to go out and use the restroom in the morning and things, needed to be revamped entirely. That turf, they have to sterilize it so much, and the chemicals are so hard.
Yes.
So we just got that finished, and a couple of years ago, I think, we put the shade covers up, right? Because in the summertime, that sun beating down on that astroturf, the dogs
hot.
would get little, they didn't want to go. It was
Yeah,
like
it's too hot.
blistering. There were pads. So Stacy came up with a great design on those shade covers, and they're retractable. So in the wintertime, when you want the sunlight coming into the building and have sunshine for the animals to be out, we can pull those all back.
Wow.
But I don't know. We've got just we have purchased medication in the past. We have done heartworm medication in the past. We have medical stuff just all over the place. Tops on top of the dog kennels. Did we finally finish that
The
project?
diagnostic machines were very
The
important.
diagnostic machines
bet.
we had, and we have
To
we have something called a breathe safe monitors that they use on animals that are recovering from anesthesia, so they don't have to sit right there and make sure, when they've done the spay and neuter or whatever thing, they would have to sit and watch them to make sure they continued to breathe when they were coming out from under. And so we bought the monitors that now monitor that and goes, yep, if something happens, which
Yeah.
is frees up staff. I don't know. We have paid 3 years for adoption fees. We did Priceless Pets 1 year, and then we did $5 Friends 2 years. And we made up the difference between either the free or the $5 that the city would charge for those adoption fees, so that people could actually come and get the pets of their choice. And that was significant to help empty the shelter at a time when nobody wants to do euthanasia, but sometimes. And so
Yeah.
these were great events to hold, and paid for the vet and the vet tech to come in and help, because nobody leaves the shelter unless it's spayed or neutered, unless it's a rabbit. Because they just don't do the bunnies for whatever reason. So, and this year we've been really happy to be able to, I know that the city was in hard times last fiscal year, and cut the public spay and neuter, which we as a foundation felt was so important to try to keep the pet population down. And so thanks to our donors, again, they were very interested in that, and they allowed us to continue to pay, with partnering with the city, for a public spay and neuter day once the shelter opened enough that they could have the public. But they had to regroup the entire procedure as to how to do it. They had to go out to get the animals instead of having everybody in. It was quite the undertaking, but we were so happy that our donors were so understanding and want to fund things like that, because it's for the good of the greater community. We also partner with the San Juan Animal League on an emergency fund, which if a person comes into the shelter and they're surrendering their pet because they have an emergency, medical emergency, a one-time type thing, we have partnered with San Juan Animal League and the shelter staff, make sure that this is a one-time type event, not a dog that's on diabetic medication
Sure.
or anything. But if it can be saved, then we partner, the foundation partners with them and with Animal Haven, and we get that animal taken care of so it can return home and not be surrendered and possibly euthanized.
So that's a great point, because I have a Chihuahua at my house that I've had for, I guess he's 8 years old now, that I had found. My son and I actually had come across him in the Walmart parking lot, and took him to the old animal shelter before we had a vet there, and
Right.
was standing in line to speak to somebody, and they said, sorry, we don't have a vet. And I said, well, he's sick, so what will you do with him? Well, we'll watch him and then see what happens. And behind me, somebody tapped me on the shoulder,
I said,
who was with the San Juan Animal League, and said, let me talk to you for a minute.
good.
And said,
Good.
we can help you with this so long as you're going to keep the dog. And I said, well, I've already got 3 dogs. And they said, well, you're going to keep this dog, right?
They're
And
very
I said,
persuasive.
I was like, maybe. No, you're going to keep the dog. So the Chihuahua is still with us, and the San Juan Animal League was very helpful in
They
the
are.
healthcare. He had
Great.
mange, and he had all sorts
Oh,
of problems.
yeah.
And he's the best little Chihuahua I've ever met, so very fortunate.
Well, we're very fortunate. We're so grateful to all of our donors that just keep, and we had some anonymous donors early on in the pandemic that contacted us and said, we want to give you money earmarked for food.
For food.
For us to go, Stacy tells us what she needs, and because they give food out to people in need so that they can keep their animals at home. We don't want the animals to starve.
Right.
And they didn't have a job, they didn't have money. And so they gifted us $10,000 to just put towards pet food.
I think you should mention too, Carolyn, the number of people who bring in sacks of food
Right.
For the dogs and the cats.
Yes.
And that there are occasions when people just simply are hard pressed and need a boost for their animals, and the food is there. Yeah.
Food and blankets and many other things.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's very
There's a wish list on Amazon or Amazon Smile.
Amazon and I think Chewy. But I always say that a shelter is a reflection of its community. Like, we couldn't do what we do if we were the only ones that cared. So having a community that cares and donates however they can, whether it's blankets, time, money, I mean, it's just amazing sometimes. Like, we see a lot of bad, and sometimes it's hard to see the good, but when you're having a bad day and somebody comes in with a pile of blankets with a couple of dog toys and a bag of treats, you realize that there's more good than there is bad out there.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to the animals and how much people care. So
that's
it's
why
amazing.
I think this is important today, is to celebrate the good and celebrate the individuals who do care and are contributing, because we need more of that. Let's celebrate the good. We can get down on ourselves and down on society, but there is so much that's happening
Absolutely.
that people just aren't aware of, and,
Right.
and maybe they want to contribute. Maybe
That's
they
it.
want to be a part of
You
it.
just need the opportunity.
That's right. And we have that here if you're interested in obviously in helping any of these animals, helping the shelter. It is a problem here in our area, the overpopulation, and the spay and neuter program, regardless of the successes we may be having, they still have litters of puppies and kittens that are not being spay and neutered, and we would
Well,
ask the public to
absolutely.
continue to spay and neuter your animals.
And on the City of Farmington site is a link to the foundation page that has the PayPal button right there. So if someone doesn't want to look up our address to mail us a check, a lot of us just want to use something that's easy on PayPal. We welcome all donations, and this is my corresponding secretary.
Yeah.
And she writes thank you cards to every single person who
I bet
donates.
she does.
So she's great.
Betty's
With
a
the
legend.
picture of the shelter.
Yeah.
So
Well, great. Well, ladies, thank you for this update and the information on what the donors are doing. Is there other things we need to make sure the public's aware of, or things that may be happening at the shelter here soon?
We're kind of in discussions of how we move forward with less restrictions. A managed intake is ultimately kind of the best thing for the animals and for the staff and for everybody else. So we're talking just in talks throughout the city of how do we do that and how do we best serve the public. And watch for updates. We just recently had our application period open for public spay and neuter, and we got almost over 300 applications.
Wow.
So we'll be scheduling those out, and then we always have great animals available for adoption. If you're looking, come check us out.
Well, I love what Karen said before we got on air, that you can have as many animals as you have laps in the house.
There
At
you go.
least.
At
Now,
least that many.
Now, that was
That's
cats, right? That was
well,
cats.
that was my husband's rule.
Yes.
Yes.
But at least.
At least.
At least that many.
I want to say something too about
Yes,
the
please.
shelter staff, and that is the TLC that you see with all of them, from the front to the back, from the top to the bottom. It's a place of love and caring, and that makes a lot of difference.
It certainly does.
Thank you,
Yes,
Betty.
It certainly does, and I appreciate that acknowledgement, Betty. Well, I don't know. We're moving into a more open time. I like going to the shelter to hang out and hang out with the animals. That's something that I've missed over the past year. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that. But I know that we've got our volunteer programs to walk the dogs. People can come in and do that. The fostering program. Obviously, they always need help and volunteers for transferring the animals. And then the donations. So, I mean, it's just a full community effort in my mind that makes it a successful facility and program. And I'm just thankful for passionate people like yourselves that care and facilitate that. So thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you for having us and letting us share our message.
And for doing y'all's part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a big change for
It-
us. It's a big change going from where we were at on Lake Street to where
Oh,
we're at
mercy.
now. And we'll continue to challenge the process and grow and be better as we move on. So that's my hope.
Well, and it was the community that said we've had enough. We want something new, and they were willing to foot the bill,
Yeah, they were.
put their money where the mouth is. So that
Absolutely.
was good.
Yep.
Well, Betty, thank you for being here with us. Karen,
you.
thank you. And
Thank
Stacy,
you.
I'm sure we'll have you back on again. And in the meantime, go out to the Farmington Regional Animal Shelter, find an animal that you love, sign up to be a foster parent, contribute in some way. I know the families that are there at the shelter, the animals will appreciate it, and we appreciate you always tuning in. So stay tuned next time for another exciting episode of the Mayor's Table.